And we're back on the Donald Kent live art show with the mighty, imminent reign himself, Luke Mason. How's it going, Luke?
Hey, great to be back on your show with you, bro. I'm looking forward to the convo.
Yeah, man. So today, I have some interesting announcements, some fun stuff to go over. It's going to be a kind of a comics art lesson based on the character Dynamite Thor. If you're not aware, and you look up here, you can see Del Arroz Kent. I illustrated the graphic novel by Jon Del Arroz, written by Jon Del Arroz, called Dynamite Thor. And this Jon Del Arroz is a very, very well known and loved figure in the comics gate scene. He does all kinds of fantastic interviews. I think you just have to tune into his show. He does lots of great stuff. Super good guy. Very plugged in with culture, politics, and just the kind of guy that, like, he's just so full of positivity that nobody can get him down. Even the woke clowns out there cannot pull him down. So he's just a fabulous guy to work with. We had a lot of fun on this book. And Dynamite Thor, for your information, is actually a what do you call it? A 1930s public domain superhero character. Here's another book that we put out. So that's kind of the fun thing about these public domain characters, is that they're from olden times. And so it's a character who is impervious to dynamite. He has, like, he has the power to withstand dynamite, and so it's just a really neat, fun character. I think the theme of Comicsgate is to make comics fun again. And I love the spirit of that. It has sort of a, make America great again kind of spirit behind there. There's a lot of guys that are, just good old boy patriots and the rest of that, but you don't even have to be really political. It's really just about not, being woke, so to speak, because the comic book industry is, if it's not already dead, it's like going down in flames at the moment. And these guys here are really, taking the torch and carrying on. So I am going to do a drawing lesson based on this character. Now, why Dynamite Thor, you might ask? So the big announcement is 3, 2, 1. Jon Del Arroz has asked me if I would like to come back and do another Dynamite Thor book. Woo, woo, woo. Applause,
Woohoo!
cheers. Okay. Oh,
Hell yeah,
clapping.
bro.
Take a bow. Da, 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 explosions, glitter, dancing girls. Okay, all of that stuff. So
That's really good news.
yeah, I'm super thrilled about it. I've been putting out. I've been really supporting a lot of the Comicsgate guys on the Donald Kent Art Twitter. So if you guys look that up, Donald Kent Art on Twitter, you'll see lots of promotions. Huge fan of Graham Nolan. There's just so many good guys in on the scene there. There's just so many. So anyway, I won't go on and on flattering those guys to death. But so what we're gonna do is a kind of a drawing lesson based on this character. But let me just sort of add something to the announcement. Something that's really cool about coming back into Comicsgate through Jon Del Arroz. Oh, let me first say this isn't going to start until a couple months. He's got a bunch of projects lined up, so it'll be a little while, which is fine because I have to finish The Alliance. This is a book that I have been doing. I'm like 5 issues deep, and I think I have 4 more issues to illustrate. Then the whole graphic novel will come out, and it is going to be a grand slam. So it's just really cool how getting back into Comicsgate will put my work in front of that crowd, in front of that market, if you will. And then
That is really exciting.
yeah. And then on top of that, my original property of Militia Man will be next after that. So we're looking at, the rest of 2024, and if I can keep the momentum going, which I believe I can, then I will, So we'll see how that goes, but I'm very excited to finally get to my property, Militia Man by Donald Kent, and you can see that at kent-art.weebly.com. Anyway, just reach out. And also there's tons of live art streams on this channel where I'm doing work on this project here. So before we get into it, I thought we'd kind of warm up our eyes with some good old-fashioned fun time comics from the old days. So if you know me, I am a kind of a Bronze Age guy. So what is the Bronze Age? That's sort of, I don't know so much Silver Age. Silver Age I think is a little older, but like comics from the 70s. Well, some of this is this is the 60s, some of this. We'll look at some other stuff. But there's something about the look of comics in that day. I mean, like for me, I love the music of the 70s. To me, that was the best era of music. And
yeah, I think that's pretty natural to kind of gravitate towards what you experienced as a kid, because I feel the same way that you feel about the 70s as about the 80s. I talk to millennials and they feel the same way about the 90s. It's kind of interesting.
There's certainly a nostalgia, and the art styles were different in these times. So I can't really, I think that the work speaks for itself in its own regard. Certainly everybody has a nostalgia of like stuff they grew up with or whatever. But for me, I feel that the 70s work, in my eyes anyway, is very Americana. You know what I'm saying? Like there's something of really Americana about the look. It's mostly white. And there's just a certain charm to it. Everybody has a certain kind of a beauty to them. Whereas like when comics in the 90s and not so much. Well, yeah, late 90s, early 2000s. That's when things started getting darker and darker. Whereas back at this time, there was still an innocence in comics. For me personally, I have to say, I think the 80s was like a dead zone for comics. Like I don't know. I'm just saying this is my artistic opinion. I don't think that there was a lot of great comics that came out in the 80s. And then being one of these retrophilia guys, is that a word, retrophilia, where you love things retro,
Well, when everything modern is so paused, it's so it encourages us to love things that are retro.
There's that, and I mean, it's not just 70s. I like things from, I like, music from the 50s or, I like some things from the 80s. To me, I think the 80s were great for punk rock. It was like a good time for punk rock and alternative rock. I just have my own tastes in things, So I'm just warming us up here, looking at these figures. This book here is illustrated by John Buscema, who's.
Oh, I was looking at some Buscema earlier today, reading some Conan that I found on this website.
Very sweet, very sweet. That's his. He loved doing Conan. He actually wasn't a huge superhero guy, but Conan, he just like freaking loved that. So, like that was when he was in his zone. I think he really, went all out with that stuff. But
it's cool to see him do the superhero stuff though, because it's urban.
Yeah, he's. I mean, everything he does, I love. I just feel like he, in a sense, you could say that he typified the Marvel style. I know a lot of people are like big Jack Kirby guys out there. I think Kirby's style is so stylistic and so unique to Kirby that I don't know that anyone would want to copy it. But I think that Buscema's art was kind of like the company art, the company style that a lot of other people, I think, tried to copy. So and that's kind of what I think of. Now, I'm not saying that I draw like John Buscema, but in my mind, that is sort of the, I don't know, the bar, so to speak, like.
Yeah, the exemplar.
Yes, the exemplar. And again, there's so many good people out there. There's a guy named Ross Andrew who does not get enough love. I think like he's one of the kings of comic book art. This here is a super super special book. I unfortunately it's slightly damaged, so I'm going to be a tiny bit more careful with this one, I guess. But and sorry for being so shaky on the camera here, but there's something John Buscema like to this. I feel, there's that. I don't know. There's just something about it. But look at these, like, Superman going after a giant robot smashing through the city. You can't get any more classic than that right there,
Yeah,
And
that's bitching, dude.
yeah, it's just great.
The backgrounds on that and stuff, and the perspective is freaking amazing. Now, are we looking at Buscema still, or is this?
No, this is Ross Andrew. The thing to add to it, though, is that there were a number of different anchors on this particular book. Dick Giordano and I'm forgetting all their names, but like there was Krusty Bunkers is what's it? Who is that? That's like his. Anyway, I have the tendency on my show to like blank out on names and things sometimes, so you guys forgive me a little bit. But anyway, I just wanted to take a little time to have some fun, to look at that, and then
that cover is fire, dude.
Oh, it's total. It to me, like, I mean, yeah, I mean the whole thing. Like for starters, the dynamic. Okay, well, like Superman versus Spider-Man, how can you go wrong? Like that's just a mad killer right there. And then notice how it's angled. Like that's actually,
Yeah, dude, that's super advanced perspective right there.
Right. And then tilting the camera as such creates this like extreme sense of vertigo that is so powerful on the eyes.
Yeah. And you get some foreshortening in there with the Spider-Man's fist.
Yeah.
And it's Superman, the direction of his body is coming right at you.
It's classic, this type of figure. It's got this, Apollonian kind of true man kind of power to it. And then the inking of it, these like really, really thick, bold lines around Spider-Man are very, this really dominant looking. The of course the insane amount of like skill in doing like the background is just, I just gush over this kind of stuff. So that gets me pumped. That's the stuff that kind of gets me pumped up, and then I gotta pull out some paper and start working. You know what I mean? So
that's cool how you get inspired first. I have to do that a lot with music. Like I have to listen to something that really inspires me, and then I'm in the mood to create.
Right. It's not entirely a bad idea. This just popped into my head to maybe use some of this as kind of like models for me to work from, to maybe backwards engineer a Spider-Man or something like that. Maybe turn the camera a touch. So, excuse me, there is, if I were to do that though, you would actually see that there's something really horribly wrong with Spider-Man's anatomy in this picture. I wonder if anybody can pull it out. Can you see where it is? If you look closely,
I think the overlapping is wrong with the shoulder and the bicep.
You nailed it. His not technically, it's like the forearm. The forearm is coming right out of his shoulder. So it's like, it's like, but because the overall piece is so dynamic and beautiful, you just don't see that. Your mind makes sense of this, that like the shoulder is maybe behind the neck, and then like the arm is kind of coming out like so. But maybe what I'll do is I'll sort of fix that in a way. Maybe I'm just going to have to set this aside. You guys can't see it. I can see it. But it's
a really cool pose, though.
It really
is a good pose to work from. Like draw a mannequin from that or something.
For sure. So I'm going to kind of work this up. Maybe I'll do it slightly larger. Now, maybe I'm going to need darker pencils, though, just because the light on the camera, I feel, is a bit much. So give me 10 seconds here. How's your drawing coming along?
I have recently, I've been struggling between traditional and digital. And the reason I'm struggling is I don't have like a working scanner.
Oh,
you
wow.
know.
Yeah. Tell me more. Like,
And
how are you resolving that?
well, I thought I had it resolved because I had this picture that I had drawn in my sketchbook, and then I inked it, and I
Okay.
was like, oh, the muscles turned out really cool on this guy, and so I
Hmm.
took a picture of it with my phone, which is probably a mistake, but my phone has a pretty good camera, and I lit the picture with my camera lights so that I could, and I put it on like a it's not an easel, but it's it's like like a diagonal board, so that it
Okay.
could. So anyway, I took a decent picture of it, and I thought that using this older program GIMP, I was able to isolate the blacks and the whites effectively and
Mm-hmm.
mess with the compression or the levels,
Hmm.
the what do we call that? The contrast until
Yeah.
I could get rid of all the grays in there. But then when I actually imported it into Krita from GIMP,
Okay.
and I zoomed in on it, I realized there was like a ton. And when I started coloring it, I realized that there was a ton of these little tiny specks that
Yeah.
I just didn't see. And so then I was like kind of demotivated on my traditional art studies, at least a little bit. And
Yeah.
then I got really into last week, I got really into the digital thing again. And I was like, well, maybe what I need to do, because my main problem with digital is that, just the shakiness of my hand.
Okay.
So, and the pen picks that, the stylus really picks all that stuff up. So
Hmm.
then I was like, well, I had better, maybe what I'll do is I'll practice like what Donald said is I'll practice tracing, and I traced like a cartoon as like
Hmm.
just to practice my line work, just to get my
Yeah.
line work under control.
Right.
And and then I painted it afterwards. And what I
Okay.
discovered is that it really, like, having to get these super precise lines, I
Yeah.
learned how to use the smoothers in my software a lot better. And I also learned how to use Bezier curves, which help you make a really clean line.
Nice.
And I also learned a lot about my coloring tools in the
Okay.
software. And
Right.
now I'm like thinking, yeah, I think I'm like definitely going to go for digital. But the cartoon that I drew was really simple.
Hmm.
And so, and since I traced it and just did the painting, I did do pretty good shading though with the painting. I kind of did like a weird combination of like cell shading and blending. So it kind of looks like airbrush,
Okay.
the general feel of it, but that's kind of cool to me anyways. I might
Nice.
have to do that again because it was that's kind of the feel that I like from like those old 70s vans that would have like the airbrush art on them, you
Sure.
know?
Yeah. That's great stuff. Yeah. That's great stuff. So there's a lot I could say about what you're talking about, like, but let me kind of get back into the anatomy stuff here a bit. So
Yeah, yeah.
I'm jamming on this basic composition because it's a fun sort of dynamic pose here. But as I go through it, I can see that there's some kind of like liberties, I guess, that the artist is taking, and in the sense that, like, I was told, oh gosh, this was years ago when I was starting to learn comic book inking, and I wish I could remember the inker. Back in those days, you could like find inkers, comic like legit famous comic book guys on Facebook, and they would just chat with you. Like I don't know where they are now or whatever, but what somebody once told me that like comics is about the exaggeration of reality. It's not that you
Yeah.
want it to be like photorealistic. That's actually boring. These are superheroes. They should be super. That you're exaggerating the anatomy and blah 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 blah. So
Yeah.
that's fine. That's okay. And I think it's important for the audience to know that, like, oh well, that anatomy is not perfect, blah blah blah. Well, that's intentional. It's meant to kind of make it more exciting or more cartoony in a kind of way. Um, so as you can see, this is just the normal, layout where you just have, you establish like what I had done here with that sort of the chest area. You do kind of the back, you connect it to the hips. It's a real raw, simple looking form, but it helps you to know, well, okay, if these are the shoulders, then the neck is going to go in the middle. Or if these are the hips, then, the leg is going to come out from here and the other leg, da, 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 da. But in what's missing from this entire process is how in your mind you're kind of seeing the whole thing through a perspective box, if you will. Do you see the kind of box that
Yes.
I'm drawing there? Yeah. And
Yep.
so
Absolutely. And that helps line it up with his environment as well.
yes, and these, in a certain space, these kind of like perspective forms could be in any position. But whereas you're drawing, say, architecture and landscapes, all the lines have to point to the horizon point, the vanishing point, sorry, on the horizon line. So like
Yeah.
if I were to grab a ruler and say line up with the edge of these buildings here, and then move the ruler a little bit and line it up with the edge and a little more and line it up and a little more and line it up, line it up, line up, line up. I could eventually find the vanishing point because that edge of all these buildings is pointing to the vanishing point. And when you have that singular invisible point and you move your ruler along that line, that's how you create the perspective drawing. There's billions of videos and such on that subject matter, but this is kind of what it ends up looking like, is a sort of a perspective box in some sense. So when you're doing characters in your comics or elsewhere, you can't think 3D. I'm not cutting these chunks out of a piece of papers. I'm trying to visualize forms in space.
Hmm.
I'm mentally, this is a piece of clay in my mind, and I'm kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm squeezing, squishing, pulling, pushing, squeeze, and but I'm just doing it with my pencil instead of like I don't know, a sculptor's tool or something. So,
Yeah.
and then you self correct as you go. So, if I'm like, well, the way that this forearm connects to the bicep for me feels weird. There's something just
Yep.
wonky about that. Like but again, I'm using I'm using the comic as the example. And he pulled it
Hmm.
off. Somehow he pulled it off. For me, I'm like, I feel like maybe I want to add, before any and all of this, you have to have some sense of anatomy. You really do have to look at anatomy books and get a general sense of like, how does the human form actually look. But there would be
Yeah.
yeah, there's kind of an
I've
elbow.
seen
Go ahead.
some guys even like they'll even like have a friend if you have someone with you, or if you can time your camera, they'll
Yeah.
like mimic the pose themselves and
Oh
take a
yeah.
photo of it
Oh,
to try
that's a
and
cool
help.
thing. Yeah, I don't have the book within reach at the moment, but there's another one of the famous guys in comic skate. He put out a book on dynamic superhero drawing, whatever that I have. It's one of my go-to books.
There's a Comicsgate guy who wrote a book like that.
Yeah, again, like I'm juggling while I'm riding a unicycle right now. So like I can't remember his
Oh
name.
yeah.
And I'm pissed off at myself for not knowing his name. I maybe should have pulled that book out before the show so that I had it handy. But like, so for me, I'm sort of trying to fix the way that hand would actually look. I still want that dynamic quality, but in reality, there's the wrist. So let's say that the fist is still it's gonna kind of come out like such, maybe more like that. I know this is messy, but that's normal. In
Yeah, you got to
working,
work through this stuff.
you do you got to work through it. There's so like, and this is kind of upside down, but like, where the wrist meets the fist, you've got that fulcrum there, and there's different, you could bend it a little bit, have that bent shape right there. I'm kind of doing it straight, and then I'm figuring through, how do the fingers look and such. And again, this is just kind of rough. And then I'm like, you know what, that looks like garbage. I don't like it at all. So I'm gonna get rid of it here. Hold on. Sorry. Sometimes you hold the pencil in your mouth. Maybe I want to bend this a bit. Maybe that would look cooler. It's at least slightly more natural looking. Okay, so maybe I'll do that. I'm going to kind of leave that for now, because you can get all, like mussy in one stupid area, and then like just relax, let it go, move on to something else.
Mhm.
Da, da, da. And so I'm going to pop over here. For me, I like it when the wrist, how do I say, the bottom of the hand lines up with the forearm, like not like that is what I'm trying to say, that is like a straight line. I feel like that type of fist feels stronger than
Mhm.
that. I mean, that would be better for, say, the hand open and some kind of more dramatic. But there's something
Mhm.
about
Yeah.
that look to it that I don't know. It just I like it. It looks pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna pop
Oh,
that
you
in
mean
there.
like with
Talking about,
the more straight fist where it's one unit from the knuckle to the elbow?
pretty much, yeah. And it's funny because us
Yeah.
as martial arts guys, this is such a B level show today with my camera moving around. Sorry, guys, but you get the general sense here. So now I'm moving
Yeah.
down into the waist area. So technically, in spider in the image I'm working from, the waist is actually too small, and like the legs come out of the sides of the hips. So like in reality, that's not actually how the human anatomy works. Like, the leg would perhaps come out here more, but the way the artist has it is coming literally straight off of the hip. It's hard to describe, I suppose, but I will kind of just have fun with it and let that go a little bit, just to create, just to, again, have fun with this. So in my mind, I'm thinking of the pelvis in this kind of way, that it's this sort of, fruit of the loom underwear type thing, that it's got that kind of
Yeah,
shape.
that's what I've been drawing. And I've been looking at different because
Yeah.
I've been like trying to rotate my figures
Yeah. Yeah. Very good.
and
Very good.
like drawing the pelvis at different angles and stuff. And
Right.
that's kind of been part of my practice lately. And so I end up drawing a lot of Fruit of the Loom.
So that's a thing. But I'm just kind of, if you ever had like a GI Joe doll, then you can see the parts and how they move and such. That's, in a sense, really what you're doing, is you're creating like a sort of an action figure that you can, adjust and move the parts around, arms and legs and whatnot. So I'm gonna get going with this here. The Again, the way Ross Andrew drew it is highly stylized. It's not actually like real anatomy. It's just like fun comic book anatomy, which is cool. So I'm gonna do something in between like real anatomy, or my thinking of anatomy, and Ross Andrews anatomy. This foot might be a tad too large. That's another thing, is your eye has to sort of think through. You have to be able to sort of see, well, how deep is the space, and something closer to you is going to be larger. So it's kind of like this arm. I think it probably would be a lot more fun, or a lot more dynamic, if I were to uh, maybe pull it more out here, like, say, go like this, put the fist up here, and then, foreshorten it quite a lot, where it's coming out maybe something like this. That's kind of clunky. I'm not Ross Andrew, that's for sure.
Yeah,
I usually
something
do.
I've noticed is
Yeah.
drawing things foreshortened, like the way things actually look foreshortened
Yeah.
is weird. And it just
Very.
doesn't work out
It
in real
doesn't.
life
Right. You
very
have to have
well.
like a
But
gimmick or something. You have to
yeah,
do
and I
some kind
think
of
that's what
trick.
all these comic book artists do is
Yeah.
I think they might actually study how other comic books or how other comics artists do it more
Possibly.
than actual life, you know?
I would say that's true. I think that there's a lot of guys that learn art from comics. They, I would say that actually as a kid, that's certainly a lot of what I did, is to, try to draw Batman or Superman or whatever. Art teachers in colleges hate that. Like they're like, oh, that's not anatomy, my art teacher insulted me a lot. She always said like, oh, you're an illustrator. Like an illustrator is a dirty word, And
That's funny. That's kind of how the classical students kind of, well, actually, no, that's how the classical and the jazz musicians treat rock musicians in music school.
oh yeah. That's actually a great point. That's a great point. So I have a pretty decent layout here of a dude. I think that's fairly good. I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah.
That's sort of what you might call your underdrawing. I think of it as a mannequin. I always say dress the mannequin. So every single thing that you draw has to start out like this. Nothing ever starts here. That's not how you do it. You build up. That's how it goes. By the way, I love his fashy hairstyle on this. I think that's pretty neat.
Yeah, I was noticing that because I've got a copy of this.
Wow, I'm impressed. I'm glad you do. Very cool.
Yeah, dude, I ordered it back in the day when I first heard about you.
Neat.
And yeah, dude, I feel like such a dumbass because I didn't get it signed by you at Whackfest. But I'm like looking at these pages and everything, and I was like, oh yeah, he's got the haircut.
Yeah, so here's another, like you saw at first moment on Donald Kent, is just for fun. I did an upgrade design of the character. Jon didn't ask me to do this. I just was like, hey, what if we gave Dynamite Thor an upgrade? What would that look like? And I had some fun. And I actually did a digital colored version, which looks so much hotter than this because it's red and yellow and white. It's burning hot. It looks really sweet. And
dude, did you do this cover?
This cover here is by is it Mike Zeck? Mike Zeck, I'm pretty sure it's Mike Zeck. He's like a famous comic book guy. It's very common in comics to hire.
Jon must have his it is common for a different guy to do the covers a lot of times.
Very, very common. Yeah. And especially like a big name guy. The problem is I don't see his credit anywhere on here.
I don't see his credit either.
That's not good.
This first splash page definitely looks like you, though.
Yeah, that's
the one where he's holding the two sticks of dynamite.
That's totally
next
Donald
to that guy's head. Yeah, that totally looks like your style.
That's me for sure. So I really love this piece. I especially like this guy's face. I think it's really beautifully rendered.
It reminds me of a certain meme. The brown guy's face.
I know the one.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny.
That shall remain nameless.
Yeah. When Jon first reached out to me and we were chatting and getting to know each other, oh man, when was it? This was a good while ago. I can't actually remember the year, but we were both like super nerding out about public domain characters. He said that my style, like I have a kind of a comic book style that has that sort of like retro look to it that he thought would be a perfect fit for a retro character. And that's true.
Absolutely.
That's completely true.
Yeah.
But the main
you do have a very 70s style.
All the stuff I showed you at the beginning of the show is just like, I can't get that out of me. Like, I love that stuff. It's fun.
Dude, I want to hook up with you and see if I could maybe steal a scan or two, or at least know what those comics are. So, because I think I would like to practice drawing some of those pages.
I'll send you, like, whatever titles and stuff like that. I can send you info. The point I'm trying to
Cool.
get to
Yeah.
here is that, in the woke media of today, people of a certain desert religion are always seen as peaceful, the peaceful ones,
Oh yeah.
who do suicide bombing, the mostly peaceful ones. And
Yeah.
so
Part and parcel, bro.
yeah. So here I've got a suicide bomber, with a big bomb strapped to his chest. He's got his little trigger button there, and Dynamite Thor is like psycho. He's got two sticks of dynamite on either side of the guy's head, like, yeah, let's go, bro. Boom. Really, like, 'cause he can't be killed by explosions. That's his superpower. So
Yeah.
you're getting the mood here. It's kind of radical, actually. You get the general idea. I mean, I'm couching it or wrapping it in fun, though. It's like it's satirical in a way that is slightly dark, actually. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I mean, John is not like a dark guy. He's the opposite of that. He's very, just has a great spirit, lovely human being, good soul, and he knows how to have a good time, knows how to write a good story. So, like, when I'm doing this with him, it'll be fun, whereas, like,
Yeah.
when I get into my own original work, it'll have some darker edge to it for sure. I mean, me, I'm on I'm SPLC hate watch list, so it's got to be dark.
Oh, dude. Yeah. I got to catch up. I got to catch up to you.
You're not working hard enough, bro, if you're not on
I'm
the list.
not. I'm totally not.
I mean, they can, slaughter people in, all over the world and control the World Bank and da 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 and all this stuff. But put me on a list, yeah, that'll change things. Anyway, enough politics from Donald Kent. So let's move forward. But yeah, I feel like going from that classical uniform to something that's kind of more hip, like more fun and more, I created these boots that he can slip a stick of dynamite in the back and it'll like explode, and the force of the explosion will shoot him up in the air to so he can fly or jump real high or something like that. I was
Oh,
thinking,
that's killer.
yeah, I was thinking of, one of my favorite comic book characters is called Blue Beetle, and he has this gun that's not like a real gun. It does like flare lights and like and it might shoot like sound rays and stuff. It's like a non-lethal gun. Well, it's just a funky looking thing, and I thought, well, instead of him just throwing sticks of dynamite, why not have like a flare gun that he can, pop a stick in there and then shoot it at something,
Oh, yeah, dude.
and that way he's kind of cooler and he just has that quality, and then
Yeah, dude. And everyone's cooler with a gun.
generally, yeah. So, and then I was like, I actually tried giving him a cape because the cape is so beautiful and so eloquent and just has that like classic superhero quality. But this is too, it's like the Punisher almost. Like it just, you can't put a cape on this, he's
Yeah,
more,
dude. Plus the dynamite. Wouldn't the dynamite like shred the cape?
well, it's comics, right? The
Yeah,
physics
yeah, yeah.
in comic books don't
Of
mix
course,
with it,
the cape would have would have dynamite immunity as well.
naturally. Yeah,
Yeah, of
that's a
course.
big thing in the Superman lore, is like, how is it that Superman's costume doesn't like burn up or anything? Now here's another funny thing. At some point in this story, this, I don't know how well you can see this, but one of the bad guys hits Dynamite Thor in the back of his head with like a butt of a gun and knocks him out.
Hmm.
And I'm like, okay, explosions don't kill him, but he can get knocked out by the butt of a gun. So,
Hmm.
anyway, but it's all fun and games until someone loses an eye. Anyway, so let's move forward here. We're gonna try to get the costume on here. So now, like I said, dressing the mannequin. I guess I'm gonna probably keep using the dark pencil just because I think that you guys can see better, just with the glare and whatnot. So I'll try to hook that up. So the trick with these kind of things is that you then have to, like, say for example, look at the symbol on his chest. It's kind of like an explosion type symbol with a T on it. So you have to think,
Yeah.
well, what does that look like from every angle? So this is
Yep.
just one of those important things that you have to be able to do in drawing comics, is to draw stuff from different angles. Then there's the question of, well, how large is it? How small is it? Where is it placed on his chest? You don't think about that kind of minutia, but it's just a big part of the whole.
Oh, yeah, it totally matters because you
Yeah.
want your character to look consistent,
Yeah.
on all the different pages that he's on.
Right.
That's intimidating to me as
It
a guy who's just getting into this,
it is. Just I'm telling you, that's kind of the work of it, like the hard work of it, is like being able to draw someone over and over and over and over, and it looks like the same person from different angles. That took me a really long time to do. That's a hard thing to do,
Yeah,
frankly. Yeah.
that's something I've been working on too, and having mixed results, but it does seem like things are getting better the more I practice. So
You'll
I
find that
feel good about it.
you're right. You'll find that a lot of comics creators have, like, oh, I don't know what to call them, but they're kind of like heads that are pre-packaged, if you will, that it's just like the same face that they draw over and over and over, but they'll put
Yeah.
different attributes on it. This one has a longer chin, this one has smaller eyes, this one has a different hairstyle. There's this one's wearing glasses. There's all that kind of stuff. If you look at Japanese manga, this is one of the
Oh
reasons
yeah.
why I don't like manga, is because everybody looks exactly the same. They look like they popped out of like a toy box or a candy machine.
Yeah.
Like, I just hate how every single person looks the same. It's too stylistic in that regard. Plus, like, they look like aliens, like, big eyes, small mouths. It's so creepy.
So yeah, they all look like Betty Boop. But so I have another thought on that because I've been thinking about the same thing.
Yeah.
So I was also reading the Scott McCloud book, Understanding Comics.
Oh, wonderful.
And
that's great.
The manga thing totally reminds me of his whole concept that, the simpler the face looks, the more subconsciously like people relate to it and place themselves in that role. Because it becomes like an everyman,
totally
when and I think that might be behind some of the popularity of styles like manga and some of these simpler more cartoony styles.
It's a very, I think one could make a case for that. I don't, how can I say, like, I'm, separating my opinion from manga and saying, like, is that true or not? I think it's probably likely that it's true. There's a case to be made for that like, the more you can project yourself onto something, the more you can feel it and identify with it. But like, if you look at, say, like a Dilbert cartoon, extremely, or Charlie Brown, for example, like, very simple characters, it's like there's less information there to interfere with the feeling that you're having.
Yeah, that's really true. I think, but man, see, so I struggle with this too because, as a musician that likes really complicated music and as an artist who likes really complicated art, there's a part of me that really wants there to be more artistry, because I value it more if it's more difficult to create, and I know that those more difficult realistic styles with art and the more virtuosic music is harder to make. So there's that aspect and a lot of people that don't do art or music, they totally ignore that, and I think that's kind of behind why such simple musical styles and behind why like the Dilberts and the Bart Simpsons and the Family Guys of the world are way more popular than like all these really well drawn cartoons.
you're really opening up a very huge can of worms here, and it's like, I mean, that's an excellent concept to think through and talk through. I don't know that I could kind of argue both sides, to be honest with you, because I'm more like you in my thinking, in terms of like,
Yeah.
yeah, I love the complex stuff as an artist. When you see a certain, whatever the style is or whatever it is, it's, I'll just gonna jump off real fast right here and take a quick look at Frank Cho. His work is very realistic and very sexy. He's like known for his sexy women. Now here's a good look at, say, for example, How to Draw Faces, by Frank Cho, and it's more, what's the word I'm looking for? Like fashion model kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, just like the eyes have to look sexy, and there's a certain, lull to the neck and the cheeks. This actually is a good example of what I was just trying to do, but in a slightly more detailed look. We'll see how that kind of rough drawing, and then how it turns out to look like this in the end. Trying not to get too
Yeah.
much glare on there. You see,
Yeah.
like,
I'm looking at I just Googled Frank Cho art, and
yeah.
I do really like how he draws women.
That's kind of his thing, It's like
Yeah,
what he's
there's
known
certain
for.
dudes like Jim Lee was really good at that. Michael Turner was really
Oh,
good at drawing the ladies.
yeah.
Yeah. What did he do? That Fathom was like one of his big. He was an image guy, right? Michael Turner, or was
This
he
this
someone
this
else?
this video just turned rated R with one of those images.
Oh, dude,
Boop.
dude, don't feel bad because I was just watching the cartoonist kayfabe guys,
Okay.
and I've been watching their playlist on Outlaw comics. Have you ever delved into that rabbit hole?
It sounds very familiar, and I've come across it. You'll have to send me a link or something like that.
Oh yeah, dude. They the crazy thing about the Outlaw comics is they tend to like have a ton of ink and detail on the page, and they're black and white usually.
Yeah.
And it's like really taboo subject matters, like tons of gore and violence and sex.
Oh, okay.
And
Okay.
oh, dude, I've been I've been like looking at these different artists on their playlists, and they're like
Mhm.
they would flip to something that's really really gnarly, and then it'd be like flip the page real quick.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
let's try not to get in too much trouble here.
It's if you're like in a public place and you're looking at it on your phone, you whoops, gotta like kind of zoom through some of those things. Anyway,
You ever heard
so
of that comic Faust?
Faust the comic book.
Tim, what was his? Tim Vigil.
I'm not sure I have it. It seems like that's something that should be on my radar, but I'm not. For some reason, at the moment, it's not ringing a bell. Maybe because I'm focusing on this, though. But tell me
Yeah,
more
yeah,
about
of
it.
course.
It's okay. Tell me
Oh
more
well,
about it.
I've just been delving into that whole Outlaw Comics thing, and I just kind of discovered it by accident. And
Mm-hmm.
anyways, like a lot of another thing about a lot of these comics is there's like an insane, like obsessive level of detail, and then
Yeah.
sometimes the proportions are a little off, and it
Mm-hmm.
seems like they almost do it on purpose at times. And it's got this like weird, like these things would be in like a biker tattoo shop or something, or
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, it's like really kind of extreme art. Some of it's pretty degenerate, but
Mm.
I don't know. I found myself liking a lot of it.
Okay. I mean, it's such a big topic. There's so many rabbit holes you can go down.
Yeah.
It's tough to really talk about all of it. But let me sort of scoot back to the topic of the drawing technique stuff. So right now I'm doing the head, and one of the biggest problems that most beginners have is that people tend to make the heads too big. It's such a
Yeah, I do that.
it's like a thing, and I think it's because, like, we think like, well, that's where the primary expression is coming from, so we want to enlarge it. But
Yep. Head
you
and hands.
right, so you're gonna want, and I use such a dark pencil that I can't like erase it anymore, so I kind of screwed myself on that. But anyway, I'm gonna shrink it down a bit. And then the other thing too about the head is that, oops, oh, and speaking of faces and heads, this is something that I okay, this is a vellum paper. It's a see-through paper, and this is a
Oh,
technique you can
cool.
do. Yeah, get some vellum or copy paper, whatever it's called, tracing paper, and go to your favorite comics, and then just like go through and trace the characters. So this is Lex Luthor from the Spider-Man's versus Superman that I just showed you. But what I did is
Nice.
I created one of my own characters, a guy called Atomic Thunder, that's loosely based off of another Golden Age copyright free character. Anyway, when you do that, you see all the different expressions, you see the different
Yeah.
angles, um, and you're kind of getting to know the anatomy of the face.
Hmm.
You know, so I don't know. To me, I love this. See, one of the missions that I'm on is keep to have something that is stylistically American. And that's, I think, one
Mm.
of the number one reasons why I like the comics of the 70s, because it's so American. Now, when you're going
Yeah, I
back to
agree.
when you go back to the 60s, comics were kind of goofy. You had like people like Kurt
Yep.
Swan, or there's other artists of the time that were great artists in their way, but they were really simple, and comics were for kids, and so that the art was for
Hmm.
kids. You get my point. But in the 70s, everyone was kind of like dropping acid, man, or what? No, but it was like you had the music, you had the Vietnam War, like those kids grew up, and they needed more exciting, energetic art, blah blah blah. Anyway, it's just something
Yeah.
I plug in with. So back to the lesson stuff. So the human head, people always want to put the eyes where the forehead is, but your hairline is up here. That's
Hmm.
where the hairline is, right? So you want to take the egg shape, the oval of the head, and cut it in half. That's where the eyes are going to go. And so you
Hmm.
have to obviously have the kind of mentality of, like, the real estate of the human head, where the eyebrows are. That's generally where the top of the ear is going to be. The bottom of the ear would roughly be where the nose is. You see what I'm saying? This is a very
Yeah. Yeah.
generic kind of head, but
Yep.
it's just pretty normal human anatomy. So when you understand that, but then you start thinking of the head as a 3D form. Something I like to do is I kind of do like almost a cutaway version of the head, like this, where I can see where the eye sockets are.
Yeah. I always find that that ridge of the brow
Hmm.
really helpful.
Yeah, yeah. So also from if you saw my face, I have like fairly strong bone structure right there as well. So I'm always drawing a little
Yep.
self portrait when I do that. But
Nice. Yeah.
I don't look like Dynamite Thor. I'm just saying, but whatever. So I kind of like to pop that in, and then I'm gonna start. And then there's the noses. Believe it or not, you've got like heroic noses. You've got villain noses. You've
Yep.
got feminine noses, masculine noses. It's a thing,
Yeah. You got the snub nose. You got the aquiline nose.
Yeah, there's a lot there. So after I've kind of established where stuff goes, here and there, on a superhero, I generally like to give him a big chin, And when I say big chin, like this is like a block chin. If you look at it real close, you see how his head almost looks like a square in a sense. But for me, how I do it is I tend to protrude the chin out a bit around here. and
Hmm.
then and then I'll give him a good strong cheekbone, and the hard thing now is the drawing small. That's what I call drawing small.
Yeah, that is tough.
That's one of the hardest things I think that there is to do in comics, frankly, because you have to say everything with less lines. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
we're gonna give him that fashy hairstyle that we love so much, and kind of give it a little windswept quality to it. I was taught that hair, you should think of hair like ribbons. Like there's sort of
Oh, okay. Yeah.
chunks of hair that flow like ribbons, and that's kind of an approach that I use. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I've encountered that with a lot of really well-known artists too. They talk about it, and
mhm,
but the ribbons thing is a little new to me, but it makes a lot of sense because I was
mhm,
just watching a David Finch deal not too long ago, and someone asked him
mhm.
like, "Okay, draw some hair for us, help us
Yeah,
figure this out," and it
yeah,
totally did look like ribbons, like the way a ribbon will like fold over itself
sure, sure,
at
yeah,
certain points.
yeah, 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 yeah. So I'm just kind of wrapping this part up a bit here. I don't know what time it is. 10. Okay, we've been going about an hour, so that's like pretty good. So, this is I haven't even barely, other than in the cape, I haven't really put any shadows on the body. The shadows have a huge role in, like, developing the form, making it pop, making it
Yep.
sing, so to speak. That's like a whole other topic. But I thought this would be a fun little time to kind of work out some basic drawing skills and do a little Dynamite Thor art. I don't know, maybe I'll finish this up or something and put it in like a fan art package deal for whoever wins something, or I don't know, something down the road.
Yeah, dude,
But
that's killer. That's a
yeah,
good pose too.
yeah. So once again, I'm taking it from here and grab this. So that it was ultimately based on the classic Ross Andrew Spider-Man, and so you can kind of see Dynamite Thor based on Spider-Man. So that's kind of a fun exercise, and it's very
Yeah, I really
common.
like how you took the pose from the comic
Mhm.
and then applied it to your own piece.
This, I think, is very normal. You can't reinvent the wheel. Like every artist borrows from other artists. There are
Yeah,
artists. There's a difference between borrowing and stealing. So, like for
sure.
example,
Yeah, you didn't like trace it.
sure,
Like
sure.
I've heard
Mhm.
rumors about Rob Liefeld like tracing
I was,
stuff from
uh,
porn and then putting it in his comics.
I was actually going to bring that up. I wasn't going to talk about porn, but there are actual like clips of art that you put it right next to his art, and it's like literally identical. And I don't know Rob Liefeld. I'm sure he's a wonderful guy. I don't know. This isn't a character judgment, but I personally don't care for his art. Like it's way too over rendered, and that's just like noise to my eyes. I can't stand it. His anatomy is very annoying to me. It was massively popular. He's rich and famous, so like don't listen to me or whatever. Be
Yeah, I'm sure he's got like his good moments too, you know. So
I
I,
wouldn't.
I wouldn't I
I'm
wouldn't rip
sure.
on the guy.
No, no, no. I'm
Um,
quite sure of that. But that, like I said, like I don't know, that period in comics kind of turned me off. I didn't like any of those guys. Like I wasn't. Jim Lee is really the only one of the crew that I really was like, okay, that guy's got something. I like this. But Larson and Silvestri, I should give him something. He's
oh
definitely
yeah,
got
that guy's
quality.
pretty fantastic.
Yeah, he's got style, but I think it was the time. Like comics at that time had this like more lines makes it better, more lines, and I'm like, what the
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
especially McFarlane.
Oh
And
man, I'm really not a fan of McFarlane's work.
when
I
you
don't
were
again.
talking about how Spider-Man's leg was coming like out of his hip, I was thinking, oh, dude, you should see some of the
Of course,
McFarlane stuff.
of course, I'm very familiar with it. And I mean, ironically, Jon Del Arroz just interviewed him. Like that's the level that John is at, is that he's getting like these really big guys on the show.
I really like how he started that toy thing, dude. That blew me away how realistic his toys were, McFarlane.
Oh, well, that's cool. That's cool. And I mean, again, I'm just because I don't care for his art doesn't mean I'm attacking him as a person or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, like he's as a businessman, I think he's probably exemplary. You know, like the
yeah. But I'm seeing why you prefer the 70s style, because there is something that's like distinctively American and distinctively masculine about it.
There's something,
and it isn't over rendered either.
Yeah, there's something just very pure about it.
Mm-hmm.
That you don't get it anywhere else, and I'm in love with it. You know, the way I'm in love with the music of that era. So, and again, that's not to say that I hate all other comics. It's not apples and oranges or something.
No, yeah, it's kind of like me with music. Like I've actually listened to many different genres of music.
Okay.
And just because I know what I like the most doesn't mean that I like hate all the other genres. Like I can respect the other, like I respect country music a lot, but I know that I'm not a country musician.
You know, it's funny because I used to work for, like, I pretty much never liked country music, and then I had to work with this one guy who played it all the time.
Yeah.
So you could try to imagine like not liking a kind of music and then like having to hear it all the time, you know, like, oh, you can imagine how that would feel at first. But the good news is that we listen to country music from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, which once again is very true. It's like very Americana. And I learned to love it. I learned to love it. I wouldn't like buy a CD of it or something like that, but I guess I have this kind of nostalgia towards a time when whites were not demonized and evil and were not being outpopulated and like brutalized like the way that we are now. And so my love of 70s art and music is very much an expression of that sentiment. I'm sure that a lot of people feel that way about the 80s, that there's a big resurgence of like 80s nostalgia. I'm not a big 80s guy though. Like I think
the 80s was a little bit more sinister.
Well, politically, a lot of shit was going down. It was bad in many ways. But
the horror genre really took off, horror and heavy metal, and then also the Satanic Panic and all that stuff. And
that was a big thing.
I remember, that was huge. And I remember like that was all the stuff that I wasn't supposed to, look at or get involved in when I was a little kid in the 80s. So guess what I sought out as soon as I became an adult?
You are a bad influence, I tell you. Oh my Lord. But I don't know. For me, the reason why, like, the 80s did have good stuff, but I feel like music became corporatized. Like all of a sudden everybody had to use an electric drum machine on their songs. And I'm like, why?
Oh yeah, there was a lot of that going on.
The hell,
you're absolutely correct to notice that.
There actually is there's a documentary about what's that famous record store from the 80s? Something Records.
Tower Records.
Tower Records, and the Jewish guy who owned it, and how like the music industry and Tower Records kind of had a little bit of a footsie under the table relationship. And there was one music producer who was like the king of all music producers, who basically set the memo out, all bands have to use electric drums now. And, songs have to be under 3 minutes, or we're going to be using blah, 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 blah. And it literally was like McDonald's version music. It took all the creativity. And the 70s was an insane explosion of creativity. Frank Zappa, Crosby.
Oh
Stills,
yeah, dude.
no, yeah. So, Crosby, Stills. I can't believe
Nash and
Crosby,
Young.
Stills, Nash and Young. I don't know why I'm
Yeah,
blanking.
yeah.
Again, I blank out on this shows. All
Well,
the
and
just it
Pink
goes on and on.
Floyd and
Pink Floyd. Oh my God, one of my favorite bands, Led Zeppelin.
Boston.
Boston's insane. It's
Yeah.
just there was so many cool things. Alice Cooper. I mean, you could go on and on and on. Not that maybe I like every single one of them, but the creativity was off the hook, man. It was just insane.
Yeah.
So then, typical corporate guys that come in and like, okay, we have to can this. We have to figure out a
Oh,
way.
yeah, dude.
You get
There
what I'm
was a
saying.
guy that I was listening to on BitChute, and unfortunately, he took his channel down. But his name was it was something Jenkins. I thought it was either Jim Jenkins or Tom Jenkins, and he was kind of like a conservative Christian dude.
All
But
right.
he would talk about like, okay, they got rid of prog rock, they got rid of soft rock, and a lot of this stuff was from the '70s. And he talked about
Sure.
the wigger phenomenon, and how like all of a sudden in the mid '90s, all the guys had to be like wiggers in order to fit in, and in order to find a girlfriend and all that.
Be cool.
And and he talked about like specifically like soft rock, prog rock, and hard rock, like like '70s hard rock, or like Van Halen hair metal kind of stuff.
Masculine
like
white rock is what you're essentially.
Yeah, all that stuff got BTFO'd, and he said it's obvious because it was too white. It put the white man in too much of a favorable light, so they had to can it. And then there was another interesting thing where they brought up the connection between the gangster rap and the people who were profiting from private prisons.
Wow.
Oh yeah, dude. He had some really good talks on his channel. I'm really sad that he took all that stuff down.
That's one of the most diabolical concepts of all times. The idea of like, okay, we're gonna take this community, we're gonna make them feel like the blah 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 blah, the civil rights something, but we're gonna pump drugs into that community. We're gonna incentivize women to have like lots of kids from different men, and then we'll pay them to do that, to destroy their families. And now we're going to go ahead and make this thing called rap music, hip hop, and we're going to pay them more money for the more violent words that they can have. And
to glorify criminal behavior.
Yeah, we're going to glorify criminal behavior. And then because like early, I mean, like, Blondie did rap. I mean, back in the 80s, it was nothing. It was fun music.
It was very innocuous at that point.
Totally,
yeah.
It was just fun dance party music. And then even up through the 90s, you had kind of artistic hip hop, like Diggable Planets and Guru and stuff. I could name a few, and then suddenly it was like Snoop Doggy Dogg and Dr. Dre and Some Ice and and now it's like kill, murder, gangster, and the whole thing died. And then this is the diabolical part, is creating a prison system where they're profiting from them.
Oh yeah, it's wild.
Engineering. Look at the arc there. That the social engineering arc there it's like, I can't believe it's beyond evil. I mean, it makes the devil blush. It's so evil,
Yeah. Devin Stack was talking about this on one of his streams that I was listening to, and he brought up the fact that a lot of white kids in the suburbs were probably listening to gangster rap when it first came out as kind of like an ironic thing, and they thought it was funny. But he made a good point, and it was that they probably had no idea that was going to be the culture of the future.
Sure.
And they probably wouldn't have found it nearly as funny.
I was driving around. I should like talk or ink, but not both, because I'm fucking up this drawing. Anyway, whatever. Shut up, Donald. So what's going? Okay, so last night I was driving my son around, and we're whatever holiday weekend thing, something, and we're just having a conversation, and we kind of pulled up to a stoplight, and there was this white kid, looked to be about like 14, on his bike, and he had his phone out, and he was blasting this like nasty like gangster trap music. and
Oh yeah.
and I said something that I can't say on YouTube about the
Sure.
music, and
Sometimes people do that.
my race realism is what it is. Anyway, I said that, and my son knows my politics. I mean, he's not stupid. He knows what's going on in the world, but
Mhm.
he's his own person though. So anyway, I was like, why is this kid listening to that X kind of music? And my son says, everybody wants to be somebody. And I was like, whoa, that was
Yeah.
profound. That was like a profound piece of wisdom right there. And the fake bravado that kids get from this like gangster rap where we kill people and we take their money, like,
Yeah.
it gives them this false sense of power in a world where they're almost powerless, like video games and blah, 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 just like, especially white
Yeah.
kids. You can't look anywhere in the media today as a white kid and see a positive representation of yourself. And then,
Or even just even like that outlaw, representation. Like metal used to have that,
yeah,
but metal has, the all the mainstream metal that actually gets out
Mhm.
has been gelded.
Well, now they're
I think
trying
that's why a
to,
lot of dudes like the black metal, because it was like very and
yeah,
a very like implicitly white thing, and it was like,
yeah,
mostly whites that made it, and it was kind of scary and
right.
criminal sounding, and it was like, I think in some ways it was our response to
Well, yeah, I mean,
the rap.
that's what the White Art Collective is. That's what I am. That's what you are. We
Hmm.
are, in a way, we're kind of like angry artists. We Our art is responding to the zeitgeist, the era that we are, which is the era of white genocide. You
Yeah,
know,
we've got a few things to be angry about.
yeah, and don't get me swearing on this show. But because I love to swear when I'm angry, I am like, I swear like a sailor. But yeah, it's a serious matter. It's a very serious matter. So that's part, to tie it back into Comicsgate. Like, I'm really an outsider in every way, and you know,
Yeah, I
uh,
could see that. I was asking you about Comic Skate earlier, and
yeah,
it
yeah.
seems like it's a very kind of specific group of kind of, I would even call them maybe even more normie minded
Oh,
than the
totally,
than our sphere.
absolutely. And again,
At
like,
the
this
same
isn't.
time, I appreciate what they do.
So, for starters, I would say, like, these are our people in the regard that they just haven't crossed the bridge yet. They're
Yeah.
they're normal people who are just trying to do their dreams and trying to make comics fun again. And they're Trump voters, they're patriots, they're conservatives, they're Christians, they're the guy next door. You know what I'm saying? The girl next
Hmm.
door. They're fun, decent, goofy, loving, fun-loving people. And that's it. There's nothing. It's great. It's a great community. Um, I'm I'm gonna have to, like, hide my power level when I get in there, though. Like,
Yeah.
John knows who I am. Like, he knows what I do, who I am. But I don't bring that to the game. Like, it's John's show. It's his story, and I'm honored to be a part of that.
I
And
think
it's
it's
like,
cool that there's some crossover,
well,
you
it's
know.
kind of like he's the lead singer of the band and I'm the lead
Yep.
guitarist. You could look at it like that. So that's actually a really, really good analogy. And we're there to play music that we're kind of co-writing together. Like, he writes the story, I visualize the story, we have co-ownership of it, and it's just like extreme fun. I love it. Um, so, like, when I'm on Comicsgate shows, I'm not going to be talking about the JQ or whatever. If those guys want to talk to me about that, I'm obviously open to it, and I would gladly do those things. But when you tune into the Comicsgate shows, it's a range of like real deep comic book artist, writer, nerd stuff. That's like, different artists in history, great TV shows like Graham Nolan has a show about Star Trek, The Landing Party, which is really fun. If you like classic Star Trek and all that stuff, classic monsters, and we're artists. We talk about art,
Hmm.
and then there's just like, potty humor, like kind of the type of jokes you would say at a bar with your buddies, that kind of environment. It's just good fun. But there's
Yeah.
another.
So
Oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead. Sorry.
Okay, just wanted to
Oh,
finish. So then there's this other side where it's like a gigantic gossip rumor mill where the left is going after Comicsgate like all the time.
oh yeah. Yeah.
These
That
these
actually ties into something.
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead though.
Okay,
Oh,
sorry. I
you
just let me finish
familiar
the
with
point, and then
yeah,
I'll
yeah, go
finish
ahead.
the
Go
point.
ahead.
So
Yeah, sorry.
the point I'm trying to illustrate in its entirety is there is an entire industry of like shitty pink-haired leftist type weirdos that run these YouTube shows, and their whole existence is grifting off of finding people to criticize and say mean things about it and fabricate lies about them because they don't like the fact that we're normal people, that we have normal values, that we voted for Trump or blah 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 blah. And these lefties, like, they won't, like, if someone comes out and says, okay, well, like, come on my show or I'll go on your show and we'll hash it out, like they'll run for the shadows. They won't do that. So I'm not interested at all in engaging that kind of stuff. I guarantee you that once they find out who I am, they're going to have a freaking holiday. They're going to be like Donald Kent, Nazi, 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 fascist, fascist, Nazi, fascist. They're going to like, and
Yeah.
their clicks, their numbers are going to go through the roof, and they're going to, okay, buy my butt plugs, at douchebag.com or whatever, because that's the kind of people they are, if you can call
Yeah.
them. But
Well, that reminds me of
here's the if they ever want to talk, which I absolutely will talk in good faith with these kinds of people.
yeah.
But that, how that'll go. It's like, okay, we're getting Donald Kent on the show. We're gonna corner him and we're gonna surprise him. We're gonna overwhelm him. We'll cut him off. We won't let him finish his points and blah 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 blah. We'll use all our
Oh yeah.
little skills and tricks and and then we'll like cut parts of what he said out of context and then we'll spam the internet with it. So
That's what they always do to our guys. Always.
they live for it. Like they live for it. And
Yeah.
I'm not planning on throwing myself into the meat grinder. Like I don't have any
No,
interest
I
in
wouldn't,
that.
dude.
Nah, not at all. It's stupid. I'm more interested in having an intelligent, historically sound conversation with the Comicsgate guys and saying, like,
Yeah.
why do I hold these views? Why am I a racialist? Why am I a race realist? And start off by explaining, okay, from your perspective, where you are in the spectrum of knowledge. I understand why you think the way you think, but I'm here to say, look behind the curtain,
Yep.
da da da. And like, if they lied about everything else, then why wouldn't they lie about World War II?
Yeah, totally true.
And
Yep.
so, but something I've been trying to frame recently, because most people, of course, like racism bad, right? Well, okay, race realism good. Oh, interesting. Racism hate. Oh, okay. Race realism love. Interesting. Racism superstitious. Oh, okay. Race realism science. And that, I feel, is the way to bridge them into racial consciousness, to understand the
Yeah.
biological reality, biological
Yep.
science that cannot be. If you can see that a boy is a boy and a girl is a girl, and there's no changing that, then you can see that the races are a parallel reality here, in that you can't change that either. You see that
Yeah.
the bell curve has already done the science on that. And like, it's the Marxists who are jamming that all up and weaponizing
Yeah.
it. So like, if you like, we were just talking about the tragedy of what the Marxists did to the Black community with this hip hop to jail pipeline that they've created, literally.
Yeah.
Well, like, it's the same thing in, say, the school system. Is like, you wouldn't put a low IQ person in a high IQ environment, and vice
Hmm.
versa. You wouldn't put a high IQ person in a low IQ environment. You want to put these students in environments in which they can succeed. So
Yeah.
people of certain cultures and ethnicities need to be among themselves in a way in which they can succeed and have good values and blah blah blah. And that's called race realism. That's where the love element comes in. It's like, you wouldn't, if you really care about these people, you would give them the proper answer. You would not try to, okay, let's force these people together and we're going to keep throwing money at it and we're going to make it work because, hate has no home here. That kind of Marxist mentality is just for, like, feminist
Yeah.
losers.
It makes me think of, trying to force coyotes and wolves to live in communities together
or
when they're
wolves,
natural competitors.
or like fox and chickens, for that matter.
Yeah. 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 Exactly. Like,
Yeah,
there, it's, go ahead.
low IQ cultures are extremely predatory, and you know that. Whereas
Yeah.
white culture is in group culture. It's high trust culture. These are words they don't know. They don't know, what does high trust culture mean. They don't know the science or the terminologies that we use. We have massive dialectic. We have so much. Oh, we got decades and decades of science, and then of course all of history, behind us. So,
Yeah.
but the thing is, here's the crux of it all: conformity. Like, normal conservative normie republicards, they want to fit in. They don't want to be different. And since the left has already stolen the dialectic about what's right and what's wrong, and Nazi bad, and America good, and all, Israel is our greatest ally, all that, they're still in the farm, they're still in
Yeah.
the
On the
matrix,
plantation.
on the plantation.
Yeah.
So I'm not, I have no, I don't know. I have no agenda, is what I'm trying to say. Like, I'm not trying to go into Comicsgate saying, like, I'm going to wake you up. I'm there to do comics, have a good time. My comics have those themes in it. And if people
Hmm.
gravitate to my stories, that's fine. But it's not a hit you over the head type thing. It's woven in artistically, so that when you do realize these truths, it's a moment. It's that, like, Neo, saying, like, oh, I can do
Yeah.
kung fu, and you plug in, and whatever it is, the Lord of the Rings. It's that Star Wars moment. Oh my God, Luke, I am your father. It's so. But I got to get to this stuff. I got to get to Militia Man and other projects in order to tell those stories and whatnot. So there you go.
Yeah.
Wait, I'm
So
blathering
there
on
is
tonight. Go on.
no, this is good because I found a connection between the Comicsgate guys and the kind of world of outlaw comics. And
Okay.
the connection has to do with Ed Piskor. You ever heard of that guy?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. So he recently, like, he committed suicide.
Mm. Mm.
He
That's
they
correct.
ruined his life with the leftists did, with like these unfounded accusations, and he knew he couldn't recover from it. And the poor dude, like, he had a permanent solution for a temporary problem. But I heard
Oh,
about Ed Piskor from John's channel. And then I
right.
was like, wait, who's this Ed Piskor guy? And then
Yeah.
it turns
Yeah.
out that's why I started watching the cartoonist kayfabe guys.
Okay.
And both of those guys are into the outlaw comics.
Okay.
And it's so weird. Like, you were talking about, like, using the comics as another thing I discovered on there is in the Outlaw Comics section in the playlist.
I'm listening. Uh-oh. Your audio just died. In the playlist? Uh-oh. Luke, where are you?
Hold on.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. You're fine.
Oh, I'm sorry, dude. My phone tried to update.
Oh, that's charming.
Yeah. What I was saying is I discovered this is another tangent, so I'm sorry about bringing so many different things up at the same time.
This is really interesting and relevant. I mean, I'm horrified that this guy was overwhelmed by these lies.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go into it, but like there is a certain person out there that has like he couldn't control me with like his leftist intimidation tactics, and I kept like sort of like winning the argument, so to speak, and he finally flipped out and he started accusing me of like the worst possible things that a human can do. And I'm like, okay, I'm blocking you. You're fucked up. Like you're scaring me now. You know, you're off the chain, man. And so like, whoa, they're like that. They are like that. You know, it's funny because they're always like, oh, you know, no bullying in the safe space and all this shit. But yet they're the fucking bullies. You know, they're the ones that want to ruin your life. They, you know, we're gonna dox you. We're gonna, you know, get you.
Well, and that's basically, that's what they did to Ed.
Yeah.
And it's really sad, dude. The dude was really gifted, and I think he had like a huge passion for comics. He attended the Kubert School, from what I understand. Like he was invested. That was his life, you know. And I don't know, man. It just from there. I'm sorry to kind of change subjects, but you were talking about like, you know, with your comics, you're not trying to like be ham-fisted about it and hit him over the head or anything necessarily with that, you know. Dude, John just showed up.
John
Hails, John. Jon Del Arroz.
Jon Del Arroz, get out of town. Holy crow, my main man is here. Dude, let me show you.
Yeah, John.
How awesome.
Good to have you, man.
Wow, dude. Okay, so I was doing a drawing lesson and using Dynamite Thor as the guy here. Let me put this on here. So, you know, so Luke is learning to do comics. Luke is learning how to draw. And I've been featuring the heck out of this and, you know, kind of letting people know some interesting updates, what's coming in the future. And then I thought, you know, what would be a fun way to get into a drawing lesson? And so I started off by looking at all kinds of fun old comics to just warm up. And I, you know, pulled out a lot of these, you know, classic giant size. I collect a lot of giant size. And I thought, and so Luke and I just got really into the discussion of what an epic cover this is. It's so insanely epic. And we were talking about the, you know, the perspective drawing and the anatomy and on and on. So I thought, you know what? Hey, let's use Spider-Man's sort of, you know, his position here, his pose, and do a Dynamite Thor drawing from it. And so this isn't sort of meant to be like some kind of put it in a frame beautiful drawing, but rather it was like an example of how to do comic book drawing. And so we were discussing things like foreshortening and sort of funky superhero anatomy and just cool stuff. So we had a lot of fun with it. But on my own, I have been like actually doing some sketches for doing some like fan art stuff, because like ever since you and I talked about it, I was like, I'm like I'm getting so excited about it. I'm like, okay, I need me some Dynamite Thor. I gotta get going on drawing some fun stuff. And then I also shared this fun little goofy concept of doing like an upgrade, you know. You know, I get excited about these things. I think that's what you want from your comic book artists, you know, people who, you know, nerd out about stuff and then talking about like so he's gonna have night vision here. This is the Dino flare gun, and he's got his Dino boots. All he's got to do is slip a piece of dynamite in there, and then it shoots up. Oh, it's gonna be so cool. Blah blah blah. You know, so they're just having some fun with it. This is almost like more Punisher like, though. It's such a divergence from like the original fun all American boy Dynamite Thor that we know and love, you know. But yeah, it's just been a cool conversation. And we were just talking about Comicsgate. Um, Luke, who was the person, the comics artist that we were just talking about that he
Oh, yeah, I found out about Ed Piskor from
yeah,
your channel,
yeah,
John. So
right. So
and I was horrified when I found out about it. Like they literally like pushed this guy into a corner, and I thought it was really cool how like you and a couple other of the Comicsgate guys that I was listening to on YouTube were kind of defending him, you know, and sticking up for him, and yeah, I think that's really important that we all kind of have each other's back, you know.
big time. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much where we're at in the discussion when you popped on, is like that sort of the median between like make comics fun again and sort of the political stuff that we are facing. That this is a culture war. You know, John is no, you know, not shy about that. He the dude faces a lot of like crazy lefties, and like I love how like you've kind of got like the armor of God on it. It just all bounces off you somehow. It's really cool how positive you are about things. So, but yeah, you know, it's going on about almost 2 hours now with this show. It's almost 11 p.m. over here on the East Coast. So anyway, maybe you can probably watch the show from the beginning. But I just wanted to say thanks to Luke for coming, and we'll probably do some more stuff like this. Like I haven't even gotten into shading or rendering or any of that kind of stuff. We would just wanted to talk about 3D forms, how to construct the anatomy, comic book anatomy, and like how unique that is. That it's meant to be fun and kind of exaggerated. You know, we talked quite a bit about my love of like 70s comics, you know, Bronze Age stuff. So we'll definitely do some more shows. And John, man, for sure, I would love to have you on. We could do a little panel discussion, or, you know, introduce you more to my audience. You know, between YouTube and Twitter, I've got almost like 5,000 followers. So, you know, that's not bad, I guess. Small potatoes in internet numbers. I think, John, are you up to like 20,000 subscribers on Twitter or somewhere right now? Pretty good stuff. John does a lot more streaming than I do. He's a lot funnier than I am. He's a lot more handsome than I am. So, like, what can you do? How can you compete with this guy? Get out of here.
Well,
You know,
I was enjoying listening to John's videos.
that's
I found
another.
them to be very educational and
It's gonna sound like
encouraging, which is
it's gonna
important.
sound like I'm brown nosing, but like actually, he's just so good at talking to people. It flows beautifully. He's just a great host, you know. And like, who did you just have on your show recently, John? The Spider-Man artist, Luke. We were just talking about him. The crazy Spider-Man
Oh,
artist,
Todd McFarlane.
Todd McFarlane. Yeah, that's pretty impressive. John says I've been going off camera and the sub numbers being been going up. Okay, so yeah. Anyway, I'm just getting really excited about heading into this. I actually am finishing up a comics job, though. I've got like 4 more issues, so I know it's going to be a little while until Dynamite Thor gets back on the road again. But there's another graphic novel that I'm finishing up. It's called The Alliance. And if you look closely, you see a guy here on the cover of the Alliance that is kind of a meme. You know, Clown World, as we know him lovingly. There's a Clown World character in the
Oh
story.
yeah.
These girls here are called web girls, so they're like e-thoughts. You've got yeah, you've got Grug.
Oh,
Do you guys remember the Grug meme? That was a while back. The black box, that's got some darker symbolism. If anyone knows about our black box friends. But anyway, there's a lot of meme culture in this
Oh
story,
yeah,
and
you're
it's
talking about the black cube of despair.
yes, the black cube of despair.
The
It takes a certain,
Saturnine
yeah, there's a
black cube of
certain,
despair.
you got to have a certain knowledge base to know what we're talking about. But anyway, I hate to wrap it up just as John is jumping on here, but like I said, it's almost 11 over here on the East Coast, and Daddy got to go to work tomorrow. So I got to make the donuts, as they say. So it's lovely to see
Yeah,
you
man.
guys, John. I'll talk to you soon online. It'd be fun to hook up and do some kind of show, something fun soon. Certainly want to promote your work as much as possible. All good. I need to write anyway. Have a good night, gents. Sweet. We'll see you next time. And goodbye to all my other friends in the chat, Splatter Cat, and we had who else? We had
Robert.
Kyle was with us.
Yeah.
So it's a little late on the East Coast for shows at this, from my local guys. But anyway,
And that's my fault. That's Donald accommodating my schedule. So I appreciate y'all.
perfectly fine.
I
Perfectly
appreciate
fine.
you, Donald.
Well, you and I have such a great dynamism. There's like a really, we totally understand each other. We have the same dialectic with the same knowledge base, and then the arts and the music. So there you go. So enough blather from this boy. Luke, thank you so much for coming. Where can people find you on the internet?
They can't.
What do you mean?
Not for a while. I'm
Oh,
kind
all
of
right.
taking a break. So
You got your thing going on. I know about that. That's fine.
yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, subscribe, like, comment, share, and have a lovely day. We'll see you guys next time on the internets. Have a good night and take care.